Another Brick fan here with a look at a Star Wars set. This is Trouble on Tatooine. This is set 75299, was released in January 2021, has 276 pieces, 3 minifigures, and cost about $30 when it was released. This set is based on The Mandalorian Season 2, specifically the first episode, The Marshal. Unfortunately, the Marshal is not included in this set. I really would have liked to have seen the Marshal and his vehicle included in the set, instead of maybe the Tusken Raider hut that is here. As you can see, the set consists of 3 different pieces. So one is this ballista here, which has a spring shooter here. We have the speeder bike with the Mandalorian and the child on it. I really love how they did this with the child carrier here, the baby carrier for the child on the bike. I think that worked out really well. And then finally we have this Tusken hut, is what I'm going to call it. Just kind of this build, and then the fire, which kind of represents the fire scene in the Mandalorian episode. So let's take a look at each one of these pieces individually. I think the hut turned out pretty good. The use of pieces here kind of represent logs, and then of course the fire here. There is a little clip here, so you could take something like the Tusken staff and put it there, just as extra place to store that if you want, or display it. There's a little pot over here in the corner with a bone in it. There are a lot of hinge pieces on that, so there's friction hinges here on the roof that allow it to be angled just a little bit, so you can angle those roof pieces however you want. And then each of the wall sections is hinged together. So that's what obviously creates that kind of half circle effect here. As you can see on the back, they alternate between the tiles and plates here to give it just a little bit of texture. These 2x3 angled plates here are used to create the curvature of the roof that goes over the hut. So it does have quite a bit of space for a small build. There's also a little table perhaps down here in there, and then this center column. So you could actually get another one of these sets and kind of clip it together here and make a full hut if you really wanted to. I think that would look pretty good. Again, a small representation of a Tusken hut, and I think it turned out okay. Certainly not super complicated, but it looks pretty good. Let's take a look at the ballista. So here is the ballista, essentially a large crossbow that is built here. I like the way that they did the colors. I think it turned out looking quite nice. There is some spacing in here, so they use a 1x2 with this little post element that sticks out to kind of keep these wings of the ballista, or these ribs here, up above so that they're spaced correctly. There's of course a shooter, a spring shooter up top here to fire the spring shooter, fire this missile out of it. This missile is in a metallic silver, which I think is interesting. These are usually in a trans, like green or red, is what I've typically seen. I like the use of these pipe pieces here to kind of represent the strings of this weapon. And then in the back here, they use these cranks to represent how they would arm the weapon, and then what looks kind of like a pistol piece here to indicate the trigger or the mechanism that releases or fires the crossbow. Looking on the bottom here, there's a tripod here, 3 separate legs, and if you move these up out of the way, you see that there's a clear piece here, so it would still stand on its own. I think that was there to kind of just add a little bit of stability, but with these friction hinges, just by clicking them down a couple of levels, I think it stands on its own and it's quite sturdy. Good looking piece, and certainly relevant to the episode. Fits in with one of the battles they had with the Crate Dragon. And let's look at the last piece, which is the speeder bike. Here is the speeder bike that comes with the set. I think it looks pretty good. It does have a couple of small 1x2 clear plates here on the bottom to kind of keep it a little bit off the ground. This would have looked better if it was the 1x2 bricks instead of just the plates. I think it would have looked nicer a little bit above the ground like this. The Mandalorian fits on here kind of awkwardly, in my opinion. There's a slope here and then a grate piece, so he only holds on using his arms. Really nice Mandalorian minifig, though. We'll take a closer look at here in a minute. Lots of different detailing on here. So it does have, some greebling done with a shifter piece here. There's a round stud here with a post on it to add a little more texture. You see one of these pistol pieces here. And this is, of course, designed to go with the Mandalorian. But it's nice that there's a spot on the speeder bike. I like the use of the backpack here to help with the speeder bike. And I've already pointed this out, but they use one of these child carriers from the city theme in order to have the child or Grogu sitting here on the back of the speeder bike as he did in the episode. You see that same kind of greebling we saw on the other side. And then here's Mando's larger rifle piece that's all built together. The front of the speeder bike is sort of, it's on here solid, but it moves around a lot, so it feels a little flimsy because it moves a little bit, but it will not really separate from the build. And even looking at the speeder bike from the front, I think overall it turned out pretty nice. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the minifigures now. Here are the minifigures that are included. You see there is a Tusken Raider with a big staff-like weapon here. And then the Mandalorian comes with his long rifle here and also another blaster. There is one other minifigure, which is Baby Yoda or the child, depending on how you want to look at it. His name is Grogu, as we found it later in Season 2. This is essentially one of the baby pieces from the baby figure with a Yoda head here. Then the green hands, and then you also see a little bit of printing there in the front for his robes. You get this child in a couple of other sets. I believe it comes with the Razor Crest and with the child buildable model as well. But this is by far the cheapest way to get this, because this set comes in at, less than $30. Going back to the two minifigures, I do like this Tusken Raider. So this is obviously a custom headpiece here. Some silver printing for the mouth, which I think looks good. And then the other gray around the head as well. Good printing of the robes of the Tusken Raider. You see all of the bandoliers and pouches that he has here. This is Mando in his Beskar armor. So we have the dark reddish brown base colors and then all of his belts and weapons and straps. And you see the Beskar armor done in this metallic silver. You can kind of see the shine on it as we move it around in the light. He does have side printing here of those Beskar pieces as well. And then here is the back of our Tusken Raider with the belts and things. His robe bunched up. We have kind of a narrower cape here for the Mandalorian. And then you also see that Beskar in the back, and once again it is done in that silver. And then the rest of his belts here along the back. If you look, the Mandalorian has no expression whatsoever. He's just a plain black minifigure head, so no face for the Mandalorian. Moving around to the other side here, you do see that Beskar armor represented there, and then back to the front. Let's go back and I'll give you my final thoughts on this set. Overall, I really like this set with the kind of color scheme being very consistent through it. The three primary colors in here I think are used very effectively and consistently through the set. So you have the brown, you have the nougat color, and then that kind of yellowish tan coloring there. I think it all worked out pretty well. I do like the ballista. I think that turned out nice. There's a lot of interesting little detailing done on there with a variety of pieces, which I think turned out pretty well. The speeder bike has some nice little greebling, although as I mentioned, I think it's a little difficult to get a minifig to ride on that. Their only attachment point for a minifigure is really the handlebars, or just holding on with their hands. I like the look of the hut. I think they did a nice job with a small amount of parts. Although, like I said in the opening, I would have really liked to seen the Marshal with that cobbled together speeder bike he had. Looked like it was built out of the engine of a pod racer. I think that was a nice look, and it would have been more interesting to have seen that in this set. But overall, I think the set does represent the Mandalorian episode really well, and it does have some interesting builds in it. Hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on this Mandalorian set. I'm going to get started on my next video. And until then, happy building. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to my channel. I've left a link to my other Star Wars reviews up here on the screen.